Commitment is a weird thing. It can incite excitement, but also fear. I currently am struggling with commitment at this point in my life. And I think there's several potential causes for that. Perhaps it's my very rare and unique diagnosis of ADHD in a young teen. Or it's when I was playing baseball and realized, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. The kids are throwing harder. I don't get hit by a ball. So I stopped playing it, despite the fact that I was kind of good at it. I complained and whined to my dad, and eventually he let me stop playing it. So I realized, oh, there's an out here. I can get out of something if I don't want to be doing it. Or maybe it stems from my intimate relationships. One in particular, my first real, I would say, relationship in high school. That was riddled with commitment issues. Some on my end, but I think a lot more on the other end, but I'm skewed, who knows. But that's something that has come to impact me, is the failure to commit to a relationship. If you can't commit to a relationship, what can you commit to? And I think that fear of committing in relationships is even carried on to now as well, and maybe has impacted my decision-making on a broader spectrum, beyond just intimate relationships. And I find myself now in a position where I'm having to make a commitment. And that's no fun, but it's where I'm at. That's life, baby. That's how things go. And it's scary because there's so many different things that I think that are possible for me in the world. So many different avenues that I can go, but I have to pick one. And they're all unique in their own way and different in their own way and have their own pros, cons, highs, lows, peaks and valleys. But that's the joy of it, is the variability, is the variation of it. It's unique to me how commitment is such a double-edged sword. It's incredibly terrifying in many ways because you don't know what will happen. You don't know what the possibilities are. You don't know what variables are out there. You don't know what the world and you are capable of. But on that exact same note, you don't know what is out there. You don't know what possibilities there are. You don't know what you and the world are capable of. And that answer could be 0 or it could be literally 100. You could become the president if you put your mind to it. You can make about anything you want happen. And when I think about some of the bigger commitments I made in my life, like going to college or picking a career, I chose to go to Butler just because it felt right to me and it worked out swimmingly for me. It's worked out really great. I made some lifelong friends that I will never forget and have forever, and that's invaluable. And while I was at Butler, I fell into sports production, and I found something that maybe could be a passion for me, something that I truly enjoy. So those two major commitments that I have made have panned out delightfully, just almost perfectly. So what is there to be afraid of? Because while, yes, you don't know what will happen, you also don't know what will happen. So you gotta fuck around and find out. And this podcast is honestly a great example. I started out without a clue what I was doing and where I was going, but regardless, I committed to it. And I meddled over it for several weeks before I even started it, but once I started it, I went with it. And since then, I have put out a podcast episode every single week for now, I think 115 weeks, over 2 years. And that's nothing to sniff at. That's nothing to laugh at. That's not a small thing in any way. That's a long amount of time, and many of the people close to me are surprised that I'm still doing it. In some ways, I've surprised myself. And that's the joy of it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the joy of it all. I started 115 weeks ago hesitant about starting it because who knows if people make fun of me, if it was going to go on how I hoped, if I was going to even have anything to talk about. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I did it. And it's evolved over time with me. It's grown with me. It's matured with me. It's taken many different forms in several different seasons, if you will. And now even this episode is different than any other before. And even while filming this specific episode, I've had my fears and hesitations and my frustrations about, okay, what the fuck am I talking about? Who's going to care about this at all? But as I was meddling over it in this last pause that I took, I realized, what am I saying? In filming this episode, I'm complaining and embodying the exact thing that this episode is about. I'm just talking over video that I took of outside and whatever else I found on the internet. I don't appear in this video at all, and people wouldn't even care if I appeared in this video, and they don't really care about what I have to say. But I gotta commit to it because it's an idea, and it's something that means something to me, so why give up on it? And it was after mulling over this episode. I've filmed it about 3 times at this point. that after trial and error, that I really figured out that, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do it because that's what I want to do, and it's what seems to make the most sense for this moment. So that sort of embodies the whole vision of this episode and what I'm trying to relay to you. I'm terrified of commitment for several reasons. No one bigger than the other necessarily. But there are several occasions in my past where I've been afraid of commitment, but committed, and it's panned out better than I could have ever hoped. And several big occasions where that's happened. So why is this any different? Any decision you make is a jump into the deep end. So regardless of what you do, there's still a jump. No matter how high or low it is, there's always a jump. So just go for it. Because the longer you sit on it, the longer you wait on it, the longer you mull over it, you'll likely only drive yourself more crazy and make yourself more angry and get more frustrated, or at least I will, because of the lack of action. So you gotta go for it. You just gotta fucking commit. I apologize for the swearing in this episode, but, you know, whatever, man. This is life. Committing is scary, but you gotta do it. And I'm in a position where I'm really able to make the first sole decision on my own without any outside factors or influences. And that's even more scary. And makes this probably the biggest commitment that I've had yet in my life. But that is incredibly exciting. So while I don't have a final message for this episode, I do ask that, I don't know. And this is where I've gotten frustrated in the past few recordings, is what am I doing here? What am I talking about? But I'm not doing anything. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just doing my podcast. I'm just having fun. I'm just committing to this idea because I want to. And maybe that's where that's all I need to do. And that's actually probably where I'm going to end this episode. I don't know where I'm going. I don't really know what this episode's about. I don't even know what it's going to end up looking like. But I've committed to it. And I've done it. And I'm now here at the end. And I'm not the most happy with it. But it's good enough, you know? It's good enough. It's different. It's trying something new. It's a different flavor. It's even a small commitment. But in this small commitment, I'm opening new doors, whether small or big. So that's the big idea, I guess. Committing to something, trying it out, and if it doesn't work, you can change it. That's the beauty of it. All right. I don't know what this episode is. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Procrastinate Podcast. I will see you in next week's episode. I have been your host, Matthew Stein. You have been fantastic, as always. And I'll see you in next week's episode of the Procrastinate Podcast. Or whatever you want to call this video series on my YouTube channel. Bye.